Taranaki Kiwaitotra Incorporation is the largest supplier to Fonterra in Taranaki. PKW was formed 35 years ago. Initially, due to legislation, it could only operate as a landlord. But in the late 1990s, the buyback of perpetual leases began, a dairy hub was created, and now around 2,700 hectares are actively farmed by the incorporation.
We have 8,500 shareholders, mostly Taranaki Maori. As directors and governance of the incorporation, we represent their interests, try to make decisions that are in their best interests and grow some wealth for them. The focus for us has been really to actively manage our land, be more hands-on in what's happening on the land. So we've made a significant investment in dairy farming. We also have our leasehold interests, which contributes a significant amount of revenue to the incorporation. And we have a fishing business. We've bought back 50 leases over the last 10 years. There's another 300 leases out there in the hands of mostly Taranaki dairy farmers. So I guess in terms of the scale of 300 leases, it is very much early days for buying back those interests. You have to have a long-term view for that sort of investment though. For most of the life of the incorporation, we've been passive landlords. We've essentially been the lessor in the relationship and we've collected rent. 10, 15 years ago, we started acquiring leases, and that meant that we became contractors with share milkers, basically. So again, we weren't actively involved in the land, but we were getting closer. So just recently, we've put in place farm managers on 3 of our blocks just to see if we can get a greater return out of that and create opportunities for employment for people.
PKW owns approximately 20,000 hectares of land, which is subject to perpetual lease. Of that 20,000 hectare land portfolio, approximately 14,000 is class 1 or 2, suitable for dairy farming. So one of our goals is to secure control of that and eventually look at what other options might be available to us sort of in terms of moving up the value chain. So at the moment we are Fonterra's largest supplier here in Taranaki on about 10% of our land base. So the growth profile for PKW is quite significant when you look at it in those strategic terms.
So we could have a 5-week...
We have a range of KPIs or success indicators, I think, at Taranaki Kiwaitotra. And the bottom line obviously is one of those. Are we a profitable business? Is it sustainable over the long term, considering the huge distance we have to go in terms of acquiring back perpetual leases? But increasingly, environmental sustainability is a key concern for the incorporation. But also added to that as well is how many of our own people are actually getting back into the industry and working their lands themselves. So a key KPI for me is, are we making real steps towards getting Taranaki Māori back onto their land, back into the industry and taking control of the incorporation themselves? We have relationships with Ag ITO to ensure on-farm training for all of our staff. We have a relationship with Taratahi, which is aimed at trying to encourage more of our people into land-based training for careers in the agri sector. We also have an educational trust which gives out education grants and scholarships to our people. The take-up in terms of agriculture, you know, our profile in terms of our people who want to take up a career in agribusiness is probably similar to the general sector. But what is encouraging is that we are finding a number of our young people who are interested in learning more about PKW and potential career there. So of the 14 dairy farmers that we have within the PKW profile, 5 of those are members of shareholder whānau or Taranaki whānau, and that's something that's really positive.
There's 14 dairy units in the Taranaki region that PKW operate. This farm here is the latest that was converted just this season. There's 570 cows here this season, 190 hectares effective, 210 hectares total, and it was brought together out of 5 leases. PKW kicked off a strategy refresh 3 years ago about looking forward in terms of what mix of portfolio would ideally suit the incorporation, and out of that there was the decision made to trial 2 managed farms with PKW staff on them, and so that's into its second year this year. It's 60 bale rotary. So the basic shed construction is the sixth one that PKW have done. Always trying to look at new innovations and what's available in the market. So with this one, we actually took the opportunity to try the composite platform, which is about 20% of the weight of the traditional concrete. Should be some weight saving on gear and drive motors and things like that. And it is very quiet, like as you can see with the rubber matting on it. The cows seem to walk on and walk off very well and had very little feet trouble, which they don't spend a lot of the time obviously on concrete. It's Kevlar and carbon fibre is most of the construction, just layers of that bonded together. So it's a Waikato design. We have got the Smart Detect mastitis detection, which the staff have found really useful. We've got in-shed feeding capability. We've used it predominantly through that spring period where we were under pressure with the conversion. Definitely had pressure on pasture supply, so we used it quite extensively through that period and with a bit of molasses just to try and increase those energy levels through mating. We've got weighing through ProTrack, so we are doing groups and feeding to groups. There was a fair amount of thought went in when we established this property. The Taranaki Regional Council have got the freshwater plan under review at the moment, so everyone's a little bit unsure about where that's going to head. But at the end of the day, we realised that we had to have storage capability, and that's hence why we went to a 1 million litre concrete facility here, which gives us, depending at time of the year, 20 to 30 days storage, which in Taranaki should provide enough to get us through those wetter winter months, especially on this land here anyway. The irrigator has actually got the FarmWorks effluent management system, which has got the GPS recorder on the irrigator and which talks back to the pump here. So if things like, for any reason, the irrigator does stop moving, it will shut the pump down, so we can't run into the issue where it's just pumping and pumping in the one spot, which is important. And obviously that's where a lot of the issues come around travelling irrigators, is the fact that when they're not moving sufficiently. And the other thing too is that it gives us, if we get this tested, although the effluent does change at different times of the year, we can get a report of NPK we've applied with each run. So going down the track, that'll be important information to have. PKW have had a very good relationship with the Taranaki Regional Council, especially regarding their riparian scheme. And PKW signed a memorandum of agreement with them some years ago about getting everything completed by 2015, and we're well and truly on track for that. This farm here, we've basically completed 80% of it during the conversion process. We've just got some tidy up areas to finish off now. We've got a stream that brown trout hadn't been seen in for years. We were there the other day and there's 3 brown trout swimming around. So that to me is great. If that's the sort of thing we're encouraging and wildlife like fishing is coming back into those streams, that's brilliant.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.